Welcome to the No Limit Selling Podcast, where industry leaders share their advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling Podcast. Today I'm joined by Cid Latty. He is with the Canadian Baptists of Ontario and Quebec. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you.
This is going to be a fascinating conversation because in the world, according to Umar, it's our culture that dictates how people behave in an organization. And what's underneath that is our culture is a manifestation of our beliefs that we hold in an organization. And I wanted to chat with you because you happen to be in a faith-based organization where there are a set of beliefs. And now we're actually trying to do leadership, human development, and growing organizations with another set of beliefs that may or may not align as well as you'd like, or other people may see it as misaligning when it's really not. So looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Yeah, me too. Wow.
So you got a fancy title. It's a congregational development and consultant. What does that mean in English?
Yeah, so because I have led churches for many years, back in England, I used to lead churches there before I came to Canada, and congregational development means that I sort of help churches reimagine themselves and position themselves and serve well in their communities. And consultant is also about how I help people start churches, how churches begin, the whole process of that, how that works. So I do those two things. One is sort of helping existing churches reimagine, reposition, reconfigure themselves, think well about their future and so on, and also helping people who want to start churches that kind of fit into the culture and don't put massive hurdles in the way of people who want to explore what faith might look like.
Nice. Like the three words that I really like are intent, relevance, and focus.
Right.
And so, for example, for an organization, oftentimes you see if you go into the places, they have beautiful boardrooms and they got amazing posters about their values and their mission, and it's like we are here for the betterment of our employees, the environment, and blah blah blah. And then you ask employees, "So what's it like here?" And they go, "Not bad." It's quite different, and so the intent has to be there. How do you think the intent has changed for uh, the church, the Baptists, from what it used to be, let's say 50 years ago to now? Because I know the teachings are the same, but has the intent changed? And what was it before and what is it now?
Sure. And, in some ways, the intent is something that's even more historic than 50 years ago. But what has happened is that churches kind of began to get it muddled. They kind of began to think, and businesses can do the same thing, where you kind of forget your purpose because what you're doing is working well. And it works well, and then we forget what our purpose is, and then businesses, churches, marriages, families go sort of into a decline because they forgot what got them started in the beginning. And that's the intent, you see. So the intent hasn't changed. And what churches began to do is began to say and do things that really, I think, stopped people from exploring faith and the values of faith and how it impacts on all of life and business and so on. Because we put things in the way that said, oh, you've got to do this and not do this and some of those things were made us completely irrelevant to how people live and how people focus and how life works. So, hey, what the churches tended to do was make us more religious. Come to a thing, do a certain process, sing certain songs, go to something that feels historic, but is actually completely irrelevant to how we live, think, behave, what impacts us, what makes us better people, better husbands, better wives, better leaders, better motivators. Totally irrelevant to those things because we forgot the intent. We forgot the purpose. I definitely use this word purpose a lot because I think we are to live on purpose, and discovering our purpose gets us to recover the importance of virtues and values. And when I say virtues, I'm thinking of things like um, generosity and patience and love and looking out for other people. And, I
Mm,
think the most effective leaders are not those that just use people to get where they need to go. The most effective leaders are those who have focused on their virtues. How can I be generous? How can I add value? How can I discover my potential? Those are the most effective leaders because they seek. The first thing they'll say is, "How can I help you? How can I serve you?" They are the
right.
effective. They've understood what their intent is, and so the church has, in the last maybe 20 or 30 years, began to see we forgot what our intent was, put hurdles in the way, stopped people from coming to church because we said there's another thing you have to do that weren't our intent. And the church has begun to rediscover what its purpose is, what its intent is, and it's begun to add greater value to its communities.
Yeah, and I agree with most of what you said, and I'll just challenge you on one area.
Yeah.
I think there are some leaders that their intent is how do we build a stronger organization? And they may not be how can I serve you, but really they're very much about how can I help Sid let this is what I think the function of a leader is how let me tell you a story first and I'll tell you the point I'm trying to make. I did this thing for charity where I rappelled down a building. It was like 28 stories, and you've got a rope that you're dangling from, and it all sounded really, really good till I got to the edge of the building and looked down. And then I realized these people that are doing this rigging, I don't know them, I don't trust them, but I trust the leader of the National Kidney Foundation, and I leveraged my trust in her to these people that she said, could do this job well. And of course, everything turned out great. So I think the leader's job is to let his charges or her charges borrow the trust that the leader has in them to be fearless and go on the journey. And sometimes that can be, how can I serve you? But also it can be, Sid, I know you can do better than this.
Oh,
And
yes, yes,
borrow my trust and let's go. So
yes, yes.
you don't have to be like Jesus, although it would be nice, but you also can be very much uh, more assertive. But the problem is in corporate America, corporate Canada, all too often leaders are not that. They're
Yeah,
very
and
much about how do I
yeah,
win, how do I look good, and it's my way or
yeah.
the highway, and quite
Yeah, I
challenging.
always saying the same thing because when I say serve you, I'm not just thinking about, and I am thinking
Can I
about
get you
being
some
like
tea?
being an
Oh,
amazing
would you like
leader,
some tea?
but when I say serve, I'm not just thinking about, you know, how
Coddling.
can I serve you in the sense of what is it that you want? I'm thinking about how can I help you reach
Mm,
your potential, and so that's serving you. How can I add value? Those are good leaders. People who say they look at the needs around them. Good church leaders do this. Good community leaders do that. They look at the needs around them and they say, "How can I add value?" They're not. They're good leaders because they begin to say, "I'm going to Sometimes I have to reimagine my style of leadership
mm,
so that I add value."
absolutely.
Reimagine what. So in some situations, I might have to be very passive, but in some situations, I'll have to be very assertive. Have you been in a situation where some of the leaders you've had around you, you think, I wouldn't trust them at sweeping my floor. I
Mm,
wouldn't, I think they do a bad job just sweeping the floor. I wouldn't trust them. So in some situations, I have to be very assertive because I think that kind of leadership, that you're just going to lead me in the wrong way. You're just going to lead us. I don't want those kind of values because I think leaders, they don't only write the values, they embody the values. They represent the values. So represent means you're re-presenting it.
right.
It's not a presentation that you've done on a PowerPoint slide or you've done a presentation in a business meeting. Leaders represent the presentation. They embody it. They say, this is the values, And this is what the values look in real life. So I think we're saying the same thing.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the hallmarks is if you can have an organization, we can have these conversations
Oh,
where
yes.
I think we're slightly on the wrong, different pages, but it turns out we're on the same page.
Yes,
And
yes.
from this just pleasant conversation, we've sorted it. Because a lot of times what you see is VPA doesn't like VPC. And it's like, I don't like them. I'm going to support them. And rather than solving an issue that would be a conversation in the hallway and is done and people move on, it becomes something that festers.
Right.
So
Yes.
let's let's take a look at let's play a game, Sid, and the game is leadership tips. So
Right.
why don't you share a tip about leadership, and I'll do the same on my end, and let's see how
Right.
far we can get before we run out and start making stuff up.
Okay. Okay. I think the first tip is the ability of a leader to dream. And a dream is where you say, where you look, the building I'm in right now, somebody years ago in the 1950s, this building was built. Somebody in the 1950s stood on this vacant land and had a dream. They had a dream.
Yeah.
They said, I see a building here. And I see windows, I see doors, I see a garden, I see a driveway. Uh, they had a dream, and that dream was them thinking. They had to think it, and then they wrote some architectural plans. Before one brick was laid, somebody had a dream. That's a leader.
Mm.
So my first tip is, I think every leader needs to uh, dream. Uh, Dream about what you can't see and dream about something you can't accomplish by yourself. So the architect stood here, had a dream, and knew they couldn't accomplish this dream by themselves. I think I think every good leader has discovers what their dream is, and a dream that is bigger than themselves, bigger than they can accomplish alone, and have a dream that um, causes a little bit of disruption in there, causes us to do something that we haven't done before,
Mm.
haven't tried before, haven't thought before. A leader is somebody who knows how to dream. Now, this building is only here because somebody disrupted the land. It was a nice, nice bit of land. Maybe it was a farmer's land, but somebody came on here and
Cool.
caused disruption and built something that I'm now living in today. I think every leader needs to recover a dream. That'd be my first tip.
All right. So having a dream. So I will give tip number two that great leaders set expectations with the
Wow.
people that they're leading. And some of those expectations could be that, hey, I'm going to be totally transparent in all of these areas, but there's going to be a few areas that there's not going to be transparency in. And here's why. And I think that really lets people, it increases the trust with the leader because they know, I know where I stand, I know where we're going, I know what we're doing. Tip number three,
Mm.
Sid, what would you?
Oh, tip number three, I would say, let's go back to when we talked about serving. I think tip number three is leaders find a way to serve, and they serve people, and they add value to other people's lives. That'd be tip number three: is leaders that serve, they add value. That there's, anybody can print off a certificate. I can go onto Google, print off a certificate, and I can have a doctorate tomorrow. Do you know? Anyone can print off a certificate to say I'm endorsed by this organization. You just go on Google, just print these things off. Few people can add value on and add that. Few people can do the work of an anthropologist. They look at their people around them and they discover, what do these people actually need? And pioneering leaders, people who look at the world and imagine something different, leaders that add value, people that serve.
Absolutely. Great tip. Tip number four is lead by example. I remember when I was first starting out, there was this task that needed to be done that was kind of unpleasant, and it was cleaning the bathroom. And there was a new guy, and he got that responsibility, and he was saying, I want to do this. And I said, hey, you're the new guy. And as this argument was going on, the big boss came and took the bucket and cleaned the bathroom. And it was like, you bastard. Like, you made us both feel guilty, but it was leading by example. It was like, hey, nothing's beneath
Right.
you. It's need doing for the team. We're going to do it. And I think leading by example is really, really important. And just like
Yes.
parenting, telling your kids stuff is useless if you're modeling a different behavior. Kids watch what you do, employees watch what you do. And so, yeah, lead by example would be my tip.
Yes.
Number 4. Number 5, Sid.
Right. Number 5, I'd say lead with joy, because there's situations where we are in that there's kind of a default setting which is working against us actually being happy. There's a default setting that's actually working against. It's really easy to be negative, and leaders that lead with joy, they're rare people. I would say lead with joy would be my next tip.
So my next tip would be, and this would be tip number 6, is let me ask you a question, Sid, before I tell you the tip.
Yeah.
Which one of your teachers, in university or high school or wherever, was your favorite teacher?
A guy called Robert Tickles.
Pickles or Tickles?
Pickles.
Pickles. Okay. So how did he get make the work fascinating? How did he get the best output out of you? Like, what did he do that was so special?
Yeah, and that's about relational connections, about the stories he told, about the way he sort of envisioned the subject. So whatever he taught came alive because he connected it with stories of his life and made it relevant.
Love that. So my tip for leaders is, at the coffee machine or at lunch, ask this question to the people that you're leading individually. And what Sid's revealed is, hey, if you want the best output out of me, it's like making things come alive. Tell some stories, some metaphors that allow me to do this, and I get excited and I want to do it. And so I think, A, you get to know the people that you're leading. B, you get to know how to get the best work out of them. And C, they feel heard and connected. And I think that is invaluable, not only to know, but to document. So when you leave as a supervisor or you leave as CEO, that you're leaving a dossier behind on all the people that you lead for the next person to say, oh, Sid's a brilliant worker. And if you want the best out of Sid, this is how you do it. And it's not manipulation. It is honoring the person that you're leading by taking the time to figure out how they want to be led.
Yes. Yes. Let me give you one last tip, and that would be what I call virtues. It's kind of a churchy word, but it really means morals.
I love it.
And so things like kindness and humility and patience and generosity. There's some conversations leaders have to be in that are difficult conversations where we're having to correct some things, challenge some things. And I want those conversations to end with people saying, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for saying that to me, because of the way that I'm leading with virtues, leading with patience, with generosity, with kindness. Going into meetings where you're asking questions and listening to the response. So sometimes, especially in a conflict situation, you can go into those situations and I think you said this, didn't you? Or you did, but asking questions so that there's a generosity, there's a listening in there. Even when there's difficult, hard things to say, people, there's still people at the end of the day. These are people.
Oh, love it.
And people matter. So even if I have a difficult conversation to say, I can do it with patience, with generosity, with kindness, so that the person, and even if the person has to go on a growth learning curve through the conversation I'm having with them, it can still be done with kindness and with patience and with generosity. So lead with virtues. It's a churchy word, but lead with good morals.
It's a human word as well, yes. So I'll give you my last one. My last one is this: is If I was running an organization, it would be a lot about learning new things and then giving people that have learned it to teach it to others, which deepens the learning, and just having that sense of this is not the only way, there's many ways. And just by them learning marketing or communications or whatever they they choose and then have to present it for 10 minutes to the team or the entire company, I think is a great way to create open-minded, success-driven organization where people feel valued and they're always learning. And highest, I guess, reward would be if I know that Sid went home tonight and told his family, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what I learned today. This person was doing this presentation, da, da, da," and that would be exciting.
Yeah.
Sid, so before we part company, what is the biggest challenge for the church right now that you guys are tackling in 2023? And let's start there.
Yeah, biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is to take what is one of the most beneficial things that the church has always said and always done, and take that and speak it in a language that people understand today. That's one of the biggest challenges. It's a challenge of interpretation. It's a challenge of language. And obviously, I was a church leader in the UK, and in the UK, the church, after the government, was the biggest social provider. Okay, and no one knew about it. So the biggest, if you took away the church, the government couldn't fix the. It was the church, you see. However, how people view the church often was very negative, partly because the way that the church speaks and the language that we use isn't always helpful. Let me say it like that. So speaking in a language that people understand, because the good things that the church has to do and has to say have a huge impact. And personally, I believe that humanity is built on the things that the church says. The government and our laws are built on some of the things that the church says. It was the church's idea, you know. Fairness and law and family and community and society and the way you treat people, it was the church's idea, you know, to explore it. It was. The issue is that the church over the years has begun to speak in a way that is unhelpful. And so the biggest challenge isn't, because you explore some of the things that Jesus said and you'll find, hey, I like this guy. This guy's got good things to say. So it's not the things that we have to say that we got wrong. It's the way that we said them, and it's the behavior that followed those things that we said that made it the biggest challenge the church has. And so recovering that, I think, is taking the shroud, removing the curtain, asking forgiveness for some of the history that we have produced, and coming to the table now with some of the things that we have always said that have always been good and have been very impactful. That's the biggest challenge for the church today. And I think there's many people who are exploring Christian faith, and when they explore the foundation of what the church has to say, I think they're going to love it.
Yes. I think it goes back to that relevance kind of thing. You need to be relevant to your community. And if your communications doesn't highlight the relevance, and just say, hey, this is what we're doing for the community because we want to. I'll do a shout out to our friends, the Sikhs. And I'd gone to one of their temples on Sunday. And one of the things that they do is they serve free food for anybody, any faith is welcome there. And during the pandemic, they really, really helped a lot of communities around the world. And it's at the end of the day, it's all about be a decent human being, treat people with respect, with love. And Sid, I really enjoyed our conversation today. And
Me too.
we're going to put all your contact information in the show notes. But why don't you do where can people find you in case they're running on a treadmill listening to this interview?
Sure. Yeah. So if you go to Rend the Heavens, so REND, the heavens.ca. You'll find me, that's personally find me, that's where I hang out most. And I also hang out at Baptist.ca. So all of those two websites is where you'll find me. Rend the Heavens is my personal kind of how I serve it, around the world.
Nice.
But Baptist.ca is how I serve in Canada. And that's where you find me. And hey, I'd love to hear from you.
Superb. And what I'm going to do is we're going to wind the show up. We'll stay online and chat for a few minutes. Hang on.
Okay.
Goodbye,
Thanks for having
everyone.
me.
Subscribe to the podcast. And if you got ideas for brilliant guests, send them our way. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.